Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Shem Phillips, owner of Garphill Games and publisher of North Sea and West Kingdom series. His newest expansions to the Viacount series, Gates of Gold and Keeper of Keys, are currently crushing it on Kickstarter. Shem, welcome to the binge. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, thanks.
It is a pleasure to have you here. Just at the top, I just want to say to our audience, and I'll say this at the beginning in case people kind of clip off too early, we are actually running a giveaway this week. So check out our podcast Instagram account, Board Game Binge Podcast. That's Board Game Binge Podcast. Our Instagram account, we do giveaways from time to time. Shem has been very, very gracious in donating a base copy of Viacount as well as one of the expansions. So if you want to get in on this, this is an exciting giveaway. Check it out. We're probably going to have that go live about midday tomorrow. So check it out. So Shem, you have done just a boatload, my friend, of Kickstarter campaigns. I think I've counted 18 in total. Would you call yourself like a Kickstarter expert at this point, or?
Nah, I think I'm just an expert at what I do. I have a kind of focus of how I like to run a campaign, which might not always be the norm, but that's kind of what I've honed is like our style, our kind of, I guess, community vibe of our own Kickstarters. So
yeah. And I mean, for the guests listening, I think you're actually you're now episode, I think 148. And I think you're the first person we've talked to directly from New Zealand, right? So that's pretty cool. I mean, we've talked to people around the globe, but I think this is the first one on the Southern Hemisphere there. So I'm so appreciative to have you work this into your schedule. I know it's kind of midday for you guys. How did you get into this whole industry? So Garphill Games, where did that come from?
I started out doing it as a hobby, must be going on about 13 years now, I think, or more.
Wow.
For about 6 years, I was just making games, very boutique kind of kit set style publishing. So I'd do a few hundred copies at a time. Some of my games would even get over 100 copies. And that was like cutting cards with a die cutter, assembling the games myself, stucking stickers on boxes. So I did that for about 6 years. And I think at that point, I was quite keen to do bigger games because these were much smaller, mainly card game type games. And Kickstarter wasn't available in New Zealand. So I went to a New Zealand-based crowdfunding site called Pledge Me, did a game on there, which was my first ever game that I actually used like a Chinese manufacturer and made 500 copies of a game.
Wow.
So that was a big learning experience. And then it would have been, I think within the year, Kickstarter opened up their doors to Kiwi creators. And that's when I put shipwrights on there. And that's kind of when this journey took a big left turn and actually, a positive one. And started to see a lot more attention from outside New Zealand. And we've just been kind of honing our skills since then, really.
Now that game, I believe, had 1,300 backers, and you hit about, I think, 73,500 New Zealand dollars. Don't know how that works out into US dollars, but I mean, that's
about
pretty
50,000.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive for your first campaign there. Is that kind of what? Did the bug bite you before then, or was it the one where you're like, all right, now this is the plan?
I actually got into that one kind of thinking it might be my last game I ever designed. So, because I've been, for a hobby for 6 years and I was enjoying it, but there's other things in life, and I was like, oh, this has been a good hobby. Maybe I'll just do one final game and just get it done. Because this game had been sitting on my shelf for almost 2 years, hoping to one day publish it. So I thought I might just print 500 copies, sell them at like cost price, and then be done with it. So it was quite a big surprise to like get that much attention.
So you're actually sitting on the copy for a couple of years, and you're like, maybe we'll throw this on Kickstarter.
Yeah, pretty much. I knew I couldn't publish it myself through my normal means, so I knew I had to crowdfund it. Pledge Me wasn't big enough because it was mainly for New Zealand. So yeah, with the Kickstarter, I thought, I'll give it a shot. I wasn't expecting to sell many, maybe print 500, sell 200, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And how many years ago was that?
My brain's not the best for counting, but probably 7 years, I guess. We've got 2 trilogies now. So I guess 7 years ago, roughly.
Wow. And when you were working on that, was the thought process that like, because when you hit success like that, obviously you get kind of bitten by the bug from what I hear from a lot of the publishers I've talked to. But there's also a lot of frustrations and pain that sometimes comes with campaigns when you start scaling up to that size, right? Because it's big enough that there's a lot of headaches that come with it, but it's still not the size where you're living off of it and able to go out and kind of do that full time. So there's that kind of pain process in between. Was there doubt that entered your mind at that time? Was there any pain that you went through where you're like, gosh, I don't know, it was fun, but man.
At first, the community, the comments, that was quite overwhelming at first for me. I think I often sort of talk about it like my first campaign, especially. It was like I was on catch up for like a week behind where I should be in preparation for the campaign. That campaign had no videos and no reviews. This is way back when you didn't really have to have them. Mm-hmm. So I was really a real newbie at that point, learning and making tons of mistakes. Lost a lot of money on the first campaign and then lost more on the second campaign and then finally broke even on the third. So it was a long process to try and actually make it successful, financially at least. Yeah.
And what was some of the financial things that you did to try to help it break even? Was it predominantly just getting your cost and pricing and shipping structure right? Or was there other things you did to try to help cover off those costs?
Yeah, a lot of it was just getting the price right. Because I'm not a big numbers person when it comes to like figuring out every little detail of my logistics process. So I'm just a guy who likes to work on averages. Like, oh, it's probably about this much, figure it out as it goes. So I lost a few grand in the first one, but also just little things like people are asking, oh, can we get your old games, the old ones that aren't available? Can we get those? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You can add them on for $10 each. And didn't actually think about how am I getting those games to Europe and to America? Like, how am I sending them? So I lost a lot of money just on that kind of, I guess, naive kind of promises that I made.
Yeah.
Which now I know, like, don't give in to every little demand of the Kickstarter backers. You've got to think about it wisely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? Sometimes, because you want to please everybody, and when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody, right?
Yeah.
I had this on a campaign recently where I had someone like, it was one of the first ones we had where we said, okay, we're just going to put the best product out there. Follow what Block and Key did with Inside Up Games is with no stretch goals. Like just we're going to put the best foot forward. We did that, and we had people saying, "Hey, like where's the stretch goals?" We're like, "Well, we have some things that are going to be coming through the campaign, but we said we're not going to do stretch goals. Stretch goals, stretch goals, stretch." So we put some stretch goals out, and then the people who were demanding the stretch goals end up dropping out of the campaign. Right. So it's like a lot of pain that sometimes you go through trying to satisfy everybody. And sometimes it's better to realize that you're not going to satisfy everybody. And sometimes it's better to cut some people loose, for the greater good. Right. And, I think you made a good example of that when you have a back catalog and, the natural inclination is to say, hey, why don't I include, my catalog in this Kickstarter campaign? But for instance, say you're going to be fulfilling from Europe, like your UK, maybe you're going to have ShipQuest do your fulfillment from the UK. Okay, well, does ShipQuest have copies of all those back catalog games? Because if the answer is no, not only are you paying for shipping for the new game to get to ShipQuest in the UK, but now you have to, wherever your games are in the other parts of the world, you have to then ship the old games to get there. So now you're paying twice the shipping cost for them then to bundle it together and ship it out. So sometimes it's better just to kind of parse out what is most efficient, right? And let kind of the regular retail kind of take care of it from there. Has retail been part of your strategy at all with some of these games? Have you been able to effectively dip into your foot into the retail space?
I tried quite early on to do it, and I had some good contacts with distributors and stuff trying to get it in, but there's so many other challenges that come with that. We had about $6 grand of stock just damaged, just trying to truck it from California to Florida, I think it was.
Yeah. So
all the stock just got destroyed. So that was like, that was a letdown for me because I was like, oh, that stuff just gone. And when they're buying it at 40% and then it's gone, you're like, well, they can't make that money back. But fortunately for us, we made a partnership with Renegade. So they basically take care of all our retail stuff.
Nice.
We don't worry about retail sales. We do a few to specific people who have been with us for a long time and they want to keep buying our stock directly. But generally, we say, oh, if you want to get our games, go through normal distribution, which I know is a huge privilege that most Kickstarter creators won't have starting up. But fortunately for us, yeah, we've able to dodge the bullet of trying to get our games into stores. But I know there's lots of resources out there that act like kind of the middleman that can help you get your games into distribution, because distributors want to have a big catalog of games to buy from, not just one or two games. So yeah, it's a hard one for new creators for sure.
That's where like consolidators too, right? Like Trade Quest or even like Hit Point Sales out of the US, where they'll take the games, they'll take a percentage, and they'll go do all the work of getting it to the distributors. And if they're putting like 6 cases of your games on a pallet, it's way cheaper for them to ship a pallet full of a whole bunch of games right to that location than trying to ship 6 cases individually to a store. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So you're doing this, like, you've literally raised millions of dollars on your campaigns, right? Millions, right? So I just want our audience to know that these are some pretty huge franchises that you've created here, right? These series. So I imagine you're doing it full time now, right? Yeah. What were you doing before that? What were you doing before? Like, what was your day job before you got into board games?
I think when I first started doing this as a hobby, I was in a printing company.
Okay.
I was at McDonald's before that, so as a manager, and then went to a digital printing company printing T-shirts on demand. So that was like a small group of 3 or 4 of us that were just running a factory basically.
Yep.
And then did that for 6 years. And towards the end of it, I was like, I just want to do games. That's all I want to do, And I'd been building up this company slowly, to the point that I could bring a little bit of money out of it, but not much. It wasn't until I actually went to Essen, met with some of my like French and German publishing partners at the time, and just seeing that like these are like full-time publishers. Like they have like 3 or 4 staff, and somehow they can provide jobs for themselves and things like that. So I kind of left there going like, I'm one person. Like I should be able to probably provide for myself, and my family, of course. But I should be able to bring at least one wage out of what I've created. So I kind of just took the leap, quit my job, and fortunately it worked out. Otherwise, it could have been pretty sad to probably be back at McDonald's or something. But yeah, it was a risk, and I took it, and it paid off. So.
And did you find that your printing experience, did that help inform some of your approach on the printing side with these games too, like coming in with that knowledge? Yeah,
just understanding like like colors like CMYK, understanding things like the preparing digital files for print, bleeds, all that kind of jargon that graphic designers have to deal with. So I kind of upskilled quite a bit in my graphic design while I was there.
Yeah, I was just talking to a colleague recently where they had got their printed run from their printer, and they compared it to their digital samples, and they said it's not as vibrant as the digital samples. It's like, okay, but that's because it's a completely different process, right? Yeah. Digital is way different than doing the printing process with your CMYK and separating plates and so forth. So this game Viacount is part of a series. Now your campaign is for the expansion, right? 2 expansions, quite frankly, to the Viacount series. But I thought it'd be good for you to explain to the audience who maybe are not familiar with Viacount just essentially what that game is about and how you play it.
Yeah, so Viscounts is like, it's the 3rd game in the trilogy. So we've had Architects, which is about building buildings, surprisingly. Paladins, which is about defending your city. And then Viscounts is like the king is kind of, the people are losing faith in the king. We're not sure how long he's going to last. So let's make ourselves look nice in front of the people and upstanding and that kind of stuff. So in the game, you are going around kind of boosting your own favor, I guess, around different areas of society, like the merchants, the clergy, and the I think it's like the builders and stuff. And it's a deck building kind of hybrid game, I guess. So the action taking that you do is that you're playing one card from your hand into your tableau, and this is a tableau that is going to slide over one space every turn. So play a card, next turn that slides, play a new card, but that other card's still there. And eventually you have a tableau of 3 cards just always cycling around. So you're kind of keeping cards in play. There's abilities to push them around to make them last longer. Ongoing effects, drop-off effects, immediate effects. But their whole system is to help you basically move around this giant double-ringed rondel. So you play a card, it might have an effect, then there's the little coin cost is going to say, that's how far you have to move. And much like any Rondell game, where you land, you do some kind of benefit when you're there. So there's kind of 4 main actions you can do in the game. 3 of them are kind of your victory point kind of goals you're aiming for, I guess. And there's lots of stuff going on. It's very, very multifaceted kind of game. Sorry, someone's opened my door. And yeah, it's like a Rondell cross deck building with all other stuff going on. Classic Euro, lots of points and that kind of stuff. So very deep, very replayable.
Yeah. And this Rondell, and I got a picture on the screen here for people that are watching. This castle in the center is super cool. Like you got this 3-dimensional kind of plastic castle. And your people that you have in there, my understanding is if you have, as soon as you can get 3 people into kind of one segment of that, then one of them kind of goes further into the castle, right? And the other 2 kind of go to to either side. Is that correct?
Yeah, little explosions of people, basically.
Yeah, that's cool. And then when you did that, your prototyping of that castle, was there any challenges with that at all? Like, because often when you get into like kind of 3-dimensional plastic pieces which require molds and all that kind of jazz, it's a headache, right? So how did you approach this with this game? Did it always have that, or is this something you kind of evolved to? Or
for our early tests, it was just flat, just paper with rings and to get the mechanism working right. But I did have a 3D printer in my possession, so I went out to try and actually make my own version of what the castle might look like. And I'm not a 3D, rendering kind of person. I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm all about blocks and shapes. So I jumped on, what's it called? I forget the name of it now. Tinkercad, I think it's called, which is like a free online rendering kind of thing where you just grab shapes and move them around. And I also used Illustrator just to make the kind of the top-down views of things. So like I could import all of like the outside ring at once and then the next ring on top of that. And so it's all precise within Tinkercad. And then I think I must have done about 8 or 9 versions of the castle trying to get it right, because it had to be, if it was any bigger, there wasn't enough room for your Viscounts to move around. It was too tight because we're limited by the box size that we use. If it was any smaller, then like there's no room to put the meeples, and then it was too fiddly for big hands and stuff. You couldn't see icons because there's not enough space. So got in that sweet spot where it's just not too small but also not too big. And it took a lot of time to get it to work right. But the file we sent to the manufacturer, they then adjusted, to make it better for printing. They kind of scooped out the inside of it so it's less plastic and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it wasn't too much of a challenge, really, like considering that I'm not skilled in that area. So it's kind of, you can do it if you want to give it a shot to create these kind of 3D elements, but anything that's far more detailed, like sculpted and, characters, I'm not even doing that because I don't have that kind of talent, Yeah.
Well, certainly, I mean, that one I think did 1.3 million New Zealand dollars on that campaign. So clearly had enough funds to actually fund the molds. The challenge gets for smaller publishers where they're not producing that many games, right? And where the molds can be a significant cost portion of the game, right?
Yeah, and we considered like doing like paper craft or, the punchboard style castle as well, but it's just such a hard shape to create.
Yeah.
A castle looks cool. 5-sided shape looks awkward for a castle, so it kind of had to be a circle. Yeah.
Now with these new expansions, then, so we've got Keeper of Keys and the Gates of Gold. Can you explain the difference between these two expansions and what they bring into the franchise?
Sure. So Gates of Gold brings in a few things. The first one's a manuscript board, which is like a little kind of docking station for your manuscripts go. But each time, or the first time you get a new ribbon type of manuscript, there's 4 types of colors on the game. When you get your first blue, say, or your first black ribbon, that's going to unlock an ability in that column of action. So that kind of gives you more anytime actions you can do in a turn to help draw cards, spend resources as coins, rearrange your tableau to, benefit you, that kind of stuff. And it's just a place to kind of house them, which looks nice. So there's that. And then there's this idea of king's orders and outsiders. So the king is, he's kind of not sure what he's doing. He's letting anyone into the city, not checking them, that kind of stuff. So it's our role to like go, should we let them in or not? So you get these king's order cards, which are basically really rubbish cards that you have to play into your tableau if you want them to to trigger. And when they drop off your tableau, you get to recruit one of these outsiders into your group. You welcome them in, and now they're going to score you points for stuff. So they become those kind of point scoring cards and deck builders that bloat your deck. But they are not too rubbish. They're still pretty good. Or you can actually destroy these King's Orders, like rip them up in a way, and say, no, get out of here, you're not welcome. And you get this kind of nice bonus, but then it's also some corruption and debt to come with it because you're kind of being a bit shady. Yeah, that's what that one mainly adds.
And so it's really cool because the board's got like these cutouts, right? So it's like notched, so the actual like manuscripts actually fit, like nestled into this board, right? It's all nice and cut together. Now, does this board replace the one that comes with the base game, or is it an addition to it, or how does that work?
The manuscript board's an addition, and then Keeper of Keys actually comes with the replacement player boards, which are they're like the 2 mil thick punch board rather than the flat paper card. Yeah.
And then the Keeper of the Keys. So what is the Keeper of the Keys then? So
that has the player boards with the punch outs with the corruption and virtue markers, and these new slots at the bottom where you plug in these new chest tiles.
Okay.
So chest tiles are a new thing you can pick up. They are going to give you some points, but the main thing is that when they sit below a slot, when a card with the right icons lands into that slot, it's going to give you an effect, either immediate or ongoing, in that slot. So it helps you to kind of tailor make your player board to what you're focusing on. So if your deck is built with lots of noble icons, you can get these noble chests to then trigger off effects as they come into your board, and you can manipulate them to move them around and that kind of stuff. And the other thing that adds mainly, I think there's the public buildings it adds, but also it gives a way of getting more hero cards into your hand, which hero cards are basically far more powerful townsfolk cards. There's the generic ones that you can hide, and there's these awesome ones you usually have one, but this lets you get them into your hand and then play on turn straight away. So your deck kind of gets way cooler in that expansion as well.
Oh, that's cool. So you can actually, and this was one of my questions when I was coming in, I was like, oh, these both look really cool, but can you play with them both at the same time? And it sounds like you can. So you can add both these expansions at the same time. So you can do either or both, I guess, if you want to kind of fully kind of round out and make your experience more robust.
Yeah, it just makes for a much bigger decision space. So like it might be a bit much to play both, but you can, and we have. I think Sam and I, we kind of resolved that we actually would like to play each one separately, and maybe both together now and then, but kind of alternate, because it kind of keeps it fresh, gives you something new to focus on each time you play. So the options are there either way.
Does it add to the playtime at all?
Not really, no. It's already got quite a kind of variable length because the players determine how long the game goes based on how they play.
Yeah.
So it's not noticeable, at least. Yeah.
And then the collector's box. Can you talk a little bit about this collector's box and what that's all about?
So it's basically just a storage solution. It has an insert, molded insert. It comes with a few crossover promos, which basically require both expansions, but they integrate mechanisms between them. So you'll have these outsiders that have to do with getting heroes or getting chest tiles, so crossover effects. But it's just a box with those and the insert, and it's designed to house basically everything Viacount's related.
Oh, that's cool. Is this something that you will be doing with your other series as well? Will you be creating kind of like these all-in collector's boxes with expansions, or?
Not moving forward.
No.
I don't like doing them.
That's awesome. It's like, no.
We do them basically because people want them.
Yeah.
So we've had to do them in the past because we had a smaller box size we like.
Yeah.
But our games are getting bigger and bigger, and they're kind of outgrowing these boxes.
Yeah.
So with the West Kingdom, we've had to like release these collector's boxes reluctantly. Yeah. But for the South trilogy, which I guess we'll talk about at some point, and moving forward from that, we're going to do bigger boxes so that we don't have to have these collector's boxes in the first place.
I totally get that. I mean, I got a game. I just got, I'm not going to mention which game it is. It's a fun game, but the one bone I had to pick was that I had got the base and the expansion game, and the boxes are so efficiently packed, there is zero chance that you can ever combine them. You would need another box to put everything together, and I kind of wish I had like a bigger box to kind of put everything in. So I can see how people kind of gravitate towards these collector's boxes. In some cases, I've seen people even create their own organization trays and so forth through 3D printing and so forth. It's, you know, when you're in the hobby industry, it's not just as simple as just whipping out a game and playing it. Like, people really give a lot of love and care to their games, and, you know, really want to make sure they're protected and last a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. With 18 campaigns now that you've done, clearly you've probably accumulated some knowledge on how to run a proper Kickstarter campaign. For those listeners out there who may be considering doing it themselves, right, launching their own game or maybe working with a colleague and putting a game out there, what are some of the things you would think are probably essential when it comes to launching a campaign that you must do when you're launching a campaign?
I think the most important thing is pre-marketing. So building that community before you launch. You can't just expect to launch and then people will come look at your game. And your first one is always going to be the hardest one. So you got to spend probably half a year to a year preparing for the launch. It's not as easy as just slapping on Kickstarter. You might get lucky. You might. But something has to sell it. That can be the artwork, which was more our case, but why we got a lot of success quickly, because no one had ever seen Metro's artwork in board games before. So it was like, oh, this is fresh. But that's rare, I think, especially now that more and more games come out. There's more and more amazing board game artists, so it's hard to stand out. So you really need to get people on board playing the game a lot and reviewing it, talking about it organically, not just review videos. And that's really hard to do, but that's the same for anything in life. It takes a lot of hard work and preparing and stuff. So if you don't do the pre-marketing, you're most likely not going to fund, but that's not always the case, but you've got to do it. Yeah.
In terms of community, is this something you guys have? Like, how big is your community now? Is it and where is it located? Is it primarily Facebook or Discord or?
So yeah, we used mainly Facebook early on, and also just Kickstarter, because you can, if you have one campaign successful, you can then message everyone through an update about your next campaign. So it's really good for that. Facebook is kind of dying off, for me personally, and I think as most people are experiencing. So we use Instagram mainly for visual stuff. We use Twitter, but I can't stand Twitter, so it's only just little updates here and there. Our main focus is actually our Discord server. So we've got about 1,700 people in there.
Nice.
We organize playtesting for TTS through there. We do rulebook proofing. So it's really good because you can have, as a creator, you can assign people roles, and those roles give them access to different channels within the thing that other people might not be able to see. So we have a channel just for reviewers. So if you want to be in our Discord server and you're a reviewer, we'll give you the Herald role. And now you see this special channel that only you can see, that we can announce stuff and contact you directly about things. We do that for scribes who look at our proofreading. So we've got about 20 or 30 people in there that will proofread our games.
Oh, wow.
And just give feedback. So Discord's really, really good for that community thing. But again, why is someone going to join your group if you don't have that pre-marketing? You've got to really build it, and it takes a long time. So,
well, I guess the story there is once it's built, now you're building on a pretty wide base, right?
Yeah, you got to maintain it and got to really service your fans and your community well, by giving them more teasers of new games coming out, that kind of stuff. People get excited about things. So.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Facebook when I recently did a campaign, it was the first time I started seeing some of the marketing partners saying, hey, we can't really guarantee that these numbers are accurate that we're showing because of these new changes, right, with Apple and Apple blocking a lot of the cookies and so forth to go on your phone, where Facebook for a while there was the predominant way to reach backers, right, through Kickstarter and so forth. And now you're finding publishers are having to find alternate methods to get to those people. And the one consistent thread I see across the board is when publishers are building that network of individuals, that I don't want to call it a fan base. It's more of a community, building a community around the development of the game where people feel somewhat ownership in the process. Seems to pay off when the campaign finally does go live.
Yeah, and that could be like a mail out. You could just collect email addresses, but that's not as personal as interacting with like a chat or that kind of forum feeling. So BGG is great as well. I get a lot of positive feedback, just people saying, hey, I love seeing you always popping in on comments, things like that. So I'll reply to most of the questions, or pretty much all the questions that get put on BGG. And that is as simple as just when you put up your game, put subscribe. Whenever you post something, subscribe. If someone else shares a picture, subscribe. You'll get notified. So it's pretty simple. But if you don't know BGG well, that might be a bit like, don't know where to start. Just everything you want to be notified about, subscribe. And so I get every comment that comes in about any of our games every picture that gets shared, I see. So
Yeah.
it's a good way to make sure you're out there, people see you interacting, which for them shows that you're invested in your product, not just trying to sell stuff to push it out. You actually care about the games you're making, which is really important. That's how you build community, is building that trust, and it's kind of like a bit of respect for your for your followers and your fans as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what comes next after these 2 expansions? Is the Viacount series now done? Are you going to keep expanding on that, or kind of what's up next for you guys? Obviously, you got something else cooking in the oven.
So yeah, the West Kingdom is done. This is our last Kickstarter for that. This is our 4th year of that trilogy. It's gone really quickly, but yeah, we're happy to kind of finish it off, round it off with the 2 expansions for Viscounts. Our next campaign will be sort of March, April, which is for Wayfarers of the South Tigris. So it's our South trilogy. So we're halfway through the trilogy, quadrilogy. So that'll be the next like 3 or 4 years of our life. We'll be releasing those games and some expansions. We also have our Ancient Anthology series, which is kind of, we've got Razor Scythia, Hadrian's Wall, and we just announced yesterday Legacy of You, which is a solo-only campaign game. So that'll be probably mid this year, Kickstarter. And then we also have our sci-fi series, Circadians. So we'll have expansions coming for both Circadians games towards the end of the year. Yeah, and then the next year is pretty much planned out as well.
And where do you find the time? Like, do you have support around you, or are you still predominantly yourself?
So we've got 3 employees at Garphill. So myself, my brother, Sam Phillips, who does the artwork for most of our games except for the medieval stuff. And then Sam McDonald, who co-designs a lot of the games with me. He's full-time as well. Yeah.
Nice.
So we bounce back ideas a lot, and that kind of keeps things motivated and fresh. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, Shem, I want to wish you all the best with this campaign. I think you still have is it 10 days to go on this campaign still? Yeah, 10 days to go. Again, over, I'll put in Canadian dollars, over $500,000 Canadian dollars already. Clearly, this is going to be another massive success for you guys, and I want to congratulate you on that. I mean, it's just cool to kind of see this series end on such a high note, and I want to wish you all the best for these new series that are coming out later on this year.
Thanks.
You
appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.